My name is Daniel Wooldridge. I'm a junior at Texas Tech, and this is an open letter to Spotify. First of all, I am a singer and guitar player in the band Indigo. We have music on Spotify and all other streaming platforms. We've been a band for about 7 years. We've independently put out 2 albums. We've toured Texas. We've played shows all over the state. We've won a couple different Battle of the Bands competitions. And we've had 30,000 all-time streams on Spotify. One of the biggest issues we face is our ability to be independent and earn a living by doing what we love. We work tirelessly at our craft. We've spent hours, days, weeks, and years perfecting the songs that we've written, our live performance, and our fan base. Spotify and streaming have given us a lot of tools. But as of right now, all of us are still working, day jobs, or going to school to make a living and support our passion of writing, recording, and performing music. One of the main struggles of today's musicians, artists, and bands is the fact that we don't make that much money off our music. A Business Insider report from 2020 said that Spotify has paid as little as .0033 per stream, which means you have to get about 250 streams to earn $1. Most people I know, artists, musicians, bands, they hop on this trend of blaming Spotify. And I did too for a long time. I thought, man, they should really be paying more per stream. These musicians are the reason that they're making so much money. And it took me a while to realize what the issue really was, who was at fault, and what can be done about it. So let's take a little bit look back at the history of the music industry. Since the beginning of civilization, music has been an integral part of society. Whether it's been in our houses of prayer, our celebrations, or our way to unwind, music is an important part of the human experience. But what about those who create the music we enjoy so much? Since the rise of telecommunications in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, many musicians were able to create a career out of their artistic creations. With bands like the Beatles, the world saw the rise of the first superstar. Those artists and bands who worked hard at their talent and had a little luck could sign a record deal and sell millions of records with a little help from a label. A&R men, which means artists and repertoire, would travel and visit concerts all over to find new bands and recruit them to labels. Once signed to a label, an artist would receive a plethora of promotional aid when new singles or albums were out, helping to sell records, cassettes, CDs, or merchandise. This business model was the standard throughout the 20th century. Since the digital age and the creation of the internet, things have changed drastically. Physical distribution of music has all but disappeared, except for vinyl records, which still hold high value for collectors. At the beginning of this era, digital distribution of music through platforms like iTunes was the standard. Consumers had the choice of purchasing an entire album or just the songs they enjoyed. They would download them, put their library of music on flash drives, MP3 players, or burn CDs. During this time is when piracy became a huge issue for the music industry. Napster, an online service that allowed peer-to-peer file sharing, was at the heart of this issue. Millions of people were essentially stealing music, movies, TV shows, and software, and the solution was streaming. Streaming arose as a way for publishers and copyright organizations to combat this piracy problem. From this, we were given platforms like Spotify and Apple Music. Most people's opinion on this issue is that streaming platforms like Spotify should be paying more per stream. But the issue is a lot more complex than that. Author Joško Lozić writes in his article, The Financial Aspects of Spotify's Streaming Model, about Spotify's business model and the finances. They look at 5 years worth of financial data and show the profitability of the business model and their losses and growth over that period. In the conclusion, the author states this: the music industry has changed its revenue model. Music streaming platforms generate most of the revenue of the music industry. Brick and mortar stores of physical sound carriers are very rare and serve only a few more vinyl collectors. This study is effective at showing the hard data on how profitable streaming platforms are, but also exhibits the loss streaming platforms do to procure music. DJ Song, an alumnus of the Harvard Business School, writes about how Spotify is here to stay in his article, Spotify, More Than a Music Streaming Platform. Song argues that Spotify has taken over the music industry and is now the rule, not the exception. John Markman, a contributor for Forbes, writes in his article titled, Spotify shares are getting killed and it's a big opportunity. Even though Spotify has become a titan of the industry, it is still having to share much of its profit margin with record labels and CMOs. He argues that because of the high cost of negotiating with labels and CMOs, Spotify loses a large portion of its profit margin. Essentially, all of these writers agree that Spotify has not been profitable up to this point. They lose money each year, and because of that fact, they are unable to pay artists a fair share. The negotiations between platforms like Spotify and the major labels and CMOs have forced the platforms to undercut their profit margin. The argument could be made that this issue of fair pay for artists is the fault of the old business model. Historically, record labels and CMOs always kept the biggest portion of the profits when it came to record sales. So what can be done around this issue? What's the solution here? Ben Cesario of the New York Times writes about how Spotify's move on licensing deals put pressure on record labels. This pushes a threat to record labels and their control over artists and copyright in order to create more independence for artists, bands, and musicians, to allow them to make a living off their music instead of having to make their money at merch and touring, to give a fair share for the artists who create the music that goes on these platforms. Spotify should move towards more licensing deals like they did with podcasters like Joe Rogan. If they can license these artists and license their music, they cut out a huge portion. We create this new model of interdependence between artists and streaming platforms. This argument is just like anything else. It's the old versus the new. It's the big guy versus the little guy. It's the corporation versus the small business. Many of us are hopeful that we'll earn a fair share of the profits our music makes, and we'll be able to pursue our passions and live out our dreams.